So we're back. Thank you for staying tuned. We want to look at the different forms of renewables being proposed. So Ronald, the proposed phasing out of fossil fuels in favor of renewables is transitioning humanity to just electricity. Is that right?
That's what they are promoting, but you can't do that because electricity generation only occurs when you have equipment, electronics, pollution control, but all those components go back to crude oil. They're all based on the oil derivatives that you manufacture out of crude oil. So you've heard the cliche, you can't have your cake and eat it too. But basically, you can't rid the world of crude oil and continue to enjoy the products and fuels that are currently manufactured from crude oil.
Right. So can the electricity from the renewables such as wind and solar, in your opinion, power modern civilization? Let's assume that they actually get their way. Can they manage to power our modern societies with just wind and solar?
Well, wind and solar, like you say, if you need oil if you want to, you need to keep oil, and the more wind and solar you generate, the more oil you're going to need to produce the components to do that.
Right.
But the problem with wind and solar is they're weather dependent. It's intermittent electricity. And currently, the press is all over coal because there's emissions from coal-generated electricity. There's emissions from natural gas-generated electricity. But coal electricity is consistent, it's continuous, it's reliable and uninterruptible. Same thing with natural gas, same thing with nuclear. And the difference is wind and solar only generates intermittent electricity.
Right.
And if you happen to be on the operating table, you want the electricity to be there all the time.
Yeah.
And if your computer has, is weather dependent on electricity, you've got to wait for the wind to blow to turn your power on. It's inconsistent. It's something that, it's there occasionally, and it's taken up a lot of our resources to build it. And basically, wind and solar don't work most of the time.
Right.
Because if the sun's not shining, it's not generating electricity. If the wind's not blowing, it's not generating electricity. And it's becoming very expensive. Germany was the first country to go green, and shut down all their continuous uninterruptible power supplies of coal and natural gas and nuclear, and is focusing on wind and solar. Well, obviously today they got the most expensive electricity in the world. And, it's, like you say, it's just delusional. You really need a backup plan before you get rid of crude oil.
Right. Sometimes they come back with the idea that the electricity from solar and wind is intermittent, but it is they have batteries that they can use for when the sun is shining a lot. They can store the energy and use it for later. How do you respond to that?
Are you kind of leading into the EVs?
Yes.
The reason I'm saying that because batteries are basically made up of components, and the components, well, let's take the EV. It'll be easier for people to understand. The EV battery is made up of lithium and cobalt. Well, those are minerals that are mined in developing countries, and it takes machinery that is bigger than an airplane to move it. To make a 1,000-pound battery for the Tesla, you got to move about 500,000 pounds of earth for all the different minerals and metals. And all the equipment to move that, the equipment is made with crude oil derivatives.
Right.
And so, go back 200 years, there was no equipment around. And we had no planes, we had no ships. And like you say, there was no trucks to worry about or automobiles to worry about. Like you say, it's going back to the 1800s.
Right.
Joyce, we had a zero emission society back in the 1800s. There were no coal-fired power plants. There were no nuclear power plants and no natural gas power plants. And the Beverly Hillbillies in California hadn't discovered oil yet. And it was a different society. You know, people very seldom live past the age of 40. And when they're born, they're very seldom, you know, traveled 100 miles from where they were born. But life was hard. And that was a life without oil.
Right, right.
And that was just a short 200 years ago.
Right. So perhaps maybe to conclude this section, we can ask, has the demand for fossil fuels declined with the availability of the subsidies for the renewable sources of energy?
Oh, absolutely not. The actually demand is increasing because, you know, all the electrical generation is just more equipment and materials that have to be made.
Keeps going back.
And you can't make them without
the
crude oil derivatives.
Right, right, right. So then we can come to your governor with his electric vehicles. He has announced that there's a ban on gas-powered vehicles from the year 2035, I think. And so perhaps you can help us to understand what kind of transition, what's happening, from your observation, what is happening there now that you'll no longer you'll all need to have electric cars soon enough.
Well, yeah, he is delusional because he doesn't understand that crude oil is the basis of our materialistic society. And he's lumping everything into fossil fuels. You know, coal, natural gas, and oil. But, you know, coal, natural gas, electrical generation can't even exist without oil because oil makes all the products.
Right, right.
He wants everybody to drive an EV. An EV is 100% made with the oil derivatives manufactured from oil.
Yeah. So
everything in our daily lives is based on oil, and he wants to eliminate oil and make it out of space dust. I don't know.
Okay, so help us to understand, what is the profile of an average EV owner in the US?
Well, let me give you one example. For California, of all the EVs in the entire United States, 40% of them are here in California. Okay. We have a temperate climate and a wealthy country, a wealthy state, being the fourth largest economy in the world. And so the elites are buying them. The elites will continue to buy them. But the profile of an EV owner is highly educated, usually 1 or 2 degrees, high income, multi-car family, and low mileage requirements. Mm-hmm. Most EVs are second vehicles. They're not the workhorse of the family. And it's, like I say, it's a type of thing that, the average citizen is not going to be able to afford it. The lithium and cobalt to build a battery, like I say, the Tesla's got a 1,000-pound battery. Now, Governor Newsom, he wants to electrify 18-wheel trucks. Now, the 18-wheelers, their batteries are going to be like 8,000 pounds. And all that lithium and cobalt. Joyce, there's not enough lithium and cobalt in the world to build those many batteries.
Right. And
the equipment to mine for that is also made with oil derivatives. There's no equipment in the world existed before we discovered oil. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things about EVs, he's promoting EVs, and I think it's totally unethical and immoral to promote that, because all the lithium and cobalt to build those batteries is coming from developing countries that have no environmental controls, no labor controls, and the environmental degradation is atrocious. The humanity atrocity is uncontrollable. In fact, I co-authored a book with Todd Royal, and it's Clean Energy Exploitations.
Right, right.
It was nominated for Pulitzer Prize because it brings transparency to the fact that all those exotic minerals and metals are being mined in China and Africa. In fact, the photo we have for the cover, we debated, a long time before we used it. It's a military guy with an Uzi overseeing a family mining for this stuff by hand. And I think it's unethical and immoral. I personally, especially after writing that book, I will not buy an EV for ethical and moral reasons, because I'm not willing to financially support the environmental degradation, humanity atrocities somewhere else.
All right.
Now, our Governor Newsom is, and so is our President Biden. We're providing incentives to buy EV tax breaks. We're providing financial incentives for China and Africa and Brazil locations to continue exploiting their people, continue the environmental degradation over there. As long as we don't see it. You've heard of the movie with DiCaprio, Blood Diamonds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these are blood minerals.
Right.
And I like you say, I think it's totally unethical and immoral to finance the operation, so we can feel good about having an EV.
Right.
And again, the EV is 100% made with the oil derivatives that were, come out of oil.
Right. Right.
If you get rid of oil, you get rid of EVs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You get rid of wind turbines. You get rid of, everything.
Right. So those are specific concerns related to perhaps the mining in Africa and the environmental degradation. Do you have any concerns with the human rights in China as relates to this renewables, the manufacture of the solar panels and the wind turbines?
Oh, yes, it's atrocious. It's atrocious, and we're not paying any attention to it.
Right.
Years ago, there was a lot of effort on the garment industry of using, child labor. But like I say, we got kids, 6 years old, mining for the stuff by hand, so some elite person can drive an EV.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it, like you say, I think it's unethical and immoral. But hey, I'm not in a position to change that. I just want to educate people, and I want to get people educated enough on energy literacy to talk about it at the dinner table.
Right. So if
You
you
have
were
to
in charge,
understand that-
if you were in charge, what
Okay.
would you do? Let's hear it. If you were in charge, what would you recommend?
I would, continue to explore for more oil. But the main thing is we got to work on efficiencies and conservation. As I mentioned, oil is here today. Like I said, we've done phenomenal things in 200 years. We, go in the space program and everything else. That all disappears, and we want to keep that as long as we can. And we got to focus on, increasing efficiencies, increasing our conservation. We don't want to waste it. We want to use it the best we can so we can have it as long as we can. But yeah, that's the main focus but doing EVs, like you say, they're 100%, everything you bring up is made with the oil derivatives that come out of oil. Now, I'm all in favor of getting rid of oil, but we've had 200 years to come up with a replacement, and we haven't done it yet. I don't know if there is one, because then it gets involved in technicalities and chemistry and that stuff. I'm not sure what else would be available to provide the derivatives to make the iPhones and the iPads and your televisions and everything in your house. But the caveman, he existed because he competed with the animal kingdom.
Right.
And that he basically had no oil and nothing to move anything. So like you say, the elephant in the room is the fact that crude oil is the foundation of our materialistic society, and we have yet to come up with a replacement.
With it.
We can camouflage it and call it an EV, but an EV is made with oil. Mm-hmm. The wind turbine's made with oil. Mm-hmm. The solar panel's made with oil. The space program, like I say, you get rid of oil, and you're going to ground, you're going to shut down all the airports, all the ships, the toilets, they go away because they're made with fossil fuels. Everything. The space program goes away, and cell phones, computers. They're all made with oil.
Right. So maybe then you can give us some closing comments, and perhaps I would request if you could share how you have rephrased the famous "How dare you" speech.
Well, I guess the "How dare you" speech is how dare you get rid of oil, because that's the basis of our materialistic society. If we don't want a materialistic society, and want to go back to the caveman days, then yeah, let's get rid of oil. Because you get rid of oil, then yeah, you're going to get rid of wind turbines, solar panels, all vehicles, and it's a lifestyle that we have to decide upon. Climate is changing. Do we want to adjust to it, or basically change it? Like I said, we live in a wealthy country. China, United States, UK, Australia, some of the wealthy countries. But of the 8 billion people in this world, we still have 80% of those people are living on less than $10 a day. They can't subsidize themselves out of a paper bag. They haven't joined the Industrial Revolution. We've gone through the Industrial Revolution, and we've gotten used to everything in our daily lives. And like you say, you have to talk about it at the dinner table. Try to identify something in your life that was not made with oil. And if you're willing to live without that, turn in your iPad. This conversation comes to an end because the Zoom meetings are not going to happen with this electronic technology. Right. I mean, all the electronics are made with oil derivatives.
Right.
So you get rid of oil and you get rid of, there's nothing left. We're back 200 years ago.
Right. So thank you so much, Ronald, for joining us and for sharing your insights on this issue and helping us to understand how feasible it is for this energy transition to happen.
Yes, I think, like I say, your audience has to understand that oil is the basis of our materialistic society.
Right.
And all the materials we have, all the components, all the equipment, all the machinery, all the jets, all the cars, space program, they're all made with the oil derivatives manufactured from oil. And until we have a replacement, I don't think we want to jump out of the airplane without a parachute.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Thank you, Ronald. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joyce.
Yeah.
Have a great day.
All right, you as well. Thank you.
A multi-million-dollar investment between the United Nations International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, and the government of Gilgit-Baltistan has led to the construction of 75 irrigation and land schemes which have brought a new source of water to an area of over 42,000 acres in the region, allowing farmers to grow crops in areas that were previously unfarmable. 1.2 billion people, roughly 1/6 of the world's population, live in severely water-constrained agricultural areas, with small-scale farmers struggling to grow enough food, partly due to a 29% increase in the number and duration of droughts since the year 2000. Now, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, is calling for accelerated investments to help small-scale farmers from developing countries access and manage water to continue producing food in a context of climate change and increased water scarcity. Greenfields like these were a rare sight in this mountainous area of Gilgit-Baltistan in northern Pakistan. But now, an irrigation channel stretching over several miles has transformed this village in Ganche from a barren land to lush green pastures. It has not only changed the landscape, but the economic fortunes of the poor rural farmers who live here. The prosperity we have seen in our village due to the construction of this channel is incredible. After completion of this channel, last year each household cultivated 2 canals, that's about 2/8 of an acre, which provided an extra income for approximately 600 kg of wheat, potatoes, and other crops, said Mohammed Abbas, a farmer of Karfak village. Over 90% of people in this region have to make a living in agriculture, but conditions here are harsh with extreme temperatures and lack of local water sources, making it difficult for farmers to grow anything.
Firstly, the region is highly mountainous, with only 2% of the land area being considered as arable. And secondly, it's an arid and semi-arid agroclimatic condition where cultivation is only possible if there is irrigation water available.
Local people first came up with the idea of building a channel over 60 years ago, but they did not have the funds or equipment to make this happen. The water channel was actually a dream of our ancestors and the food scarcity issue of the village, added Mohammed Abbas. The irrigation channel was built as part of a project that was funded by UN's International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD, and the government of Gilgit-Baltistan. This channel is one of the many that has been built in the region, not only providing water for new farms, but for existing arable plots too. Access to the water is evenly distributed depending on the size of the family, with each household member getting an equal share. Not only can they sell their crops, but use them to grow feed for their cattle. It has benefited us a lot. We cultivate fodder for our livestock, wheat and maize for our annual consumption, said Shazman. The project aims at improving income and employment for at least 100,000 rural households and in reducing poverty and malnutrition in the region.
Against a target of 50,000 acres today, more than 44,000 acres have already been brought under cultivation by building channels, sourcing water from glaciers, but also diverting it from the streams and rivers in the valleys.
This new irrigation channel have given farmers in the region food security and the chance to increase their markets in years to come.